Hello, everyone, and Merry Christmas to all who celebrate. I am so excited to be jumping in for another end of year here with my beloved TFD community, my real family, my real husband, my real partner, my real child. No, in all seriousness, this has been a pretty crazy year for me and for TFD more generally. And so I had a lot of thoughts heading into the new year, and we're pausing Just Getting Good. We have a few more episodes that'll come back in the new year, but we didn't want to run anything like on Christmas. Quite frankly, Christmas is a who the hell knows type day on YouTube. So we were like, let's just run something that we really don't care if it flops. So here I am, ready to flop right in front of everyone. As a reminder, if you have been really enjoying our show Just Getting Good this year, which has kind of been one of the highlights of my year, if not the highlight of my year in what has otherwise been a pretty exciting year, the show is largely being brought to life by our friends at advisor.com, which is, as you guys probably know, a financial advisory service. I am a big proponent of financial advisors. If you, like me, are someone who has kind of big financial goals and is entering that more kind of mature stage in your financial life, but wants help with it because sometimes it can feel a little overwhelming doing everything by yourself. They also work on a flat fee model, which means everyone pays the same regardless of how much money they have. And they work for you and not commissions. We also work very closely with the whole advisor team. We know them very well. We regularly do classes with them and workshops, all totally free, so that we can help bring education to everyone on some of these more advanced financial topics. And consultations with them are totally free. You can click the link down below and just set up a call to ask the questions you might have about not only your situation, but also what a financial advisor even does, because I think a lot of people don't even know that. So yeah, it really helps us. But that's enough about advisor.com. Let's talk about me and the financial diet more broadly. So this has been kind of a banner year, and I will talk about Just Getting Good specifically in a minute because I have been reading all of your comments on it, thousands and thousands of comments, and I have some thoughts there. But on a personal level, I put out 2 books this year, which is the most I've ever put out in a single year. I had another fiction novel, that's redundant. I had another fiction book, and I more recently published a book on hosting and entertaining. They were both USA Today bestsellers. I had a sold out 13 city tour with Williams-Sonoma. They informed me it actually sold more books than any of their other tours this year, which was really exciting. We had like almost 250 people just at the New York stop alone. So it was genuinely kind of an amazing year from a book perspective. I also had some other really exciting book news that I'm not allowed to talk about yet, but hopefully we'll be able to share on the channel next year. I actually got some really good news today, so in a very good mood. But I say all of that to say there were some really big things for me this year on projects outside of the financial diet, but for the financial diet. So as I've shared with you guys before, we have had up and down years. We had a year where in one year alone, we lost like $300,000. My husband and I have had to put up some of our own money, several $100,000 of it to keep the company alive and payroll going during some of our hardest moments. And this year, through some I think really important strategic changes in how we operate and how we monetize, we have kind of completely turned things around and are profitable enough now that we're like really steadily paying down our debt, and we just can operate from a place of financial security and stability. We have gotten more and more kind of honed at what we're good at, and identifying where our revenue comes from and where we add value, and kind of doing more with less, which is, I think, the most important thing with regards to any kind of creative or publishing business, especially one that exists on the really kind of breakneck pace of that the internet demands. We published way less this year than we have in previous years, and yet each thing that we published was much more valuable. So from a business perspective, like, I can only say, and my fellow small business owners maybe in the chat who have had bad years and know what that feels like even on the worst day as a business now, like, to go to bed knowing that we have good savings, that we are able to pay our debt, that we are growing and sustainable and thriving, like, as opposed to the countless nights that I like wasn't sleeping because I was worried about how we were even going to make payroll next week. Like, it's like truly night and day. And that's why I always say, like, I feel very strongly that literally nothing that we can do for our mental health will ever be as effective as just attaining financial stability. This is not to say that once you have financial stability that you have no problems. Obviously, you can still have problems, but for people who are experiencing acute financial stress, acute economic stress, whether that's personally or with your business or, in any other situation, familial, whatever it might be, while those issues are happening, it's essentially impossible to have good mental health. And although some mental health exercises, some therapy, some habit changes, all of that can be helpful and they can, make the symptoms more manageable or make, your day-to-day kind of easier to get through, it is never going to meaningfully change unless those economic conditions change and those financial conditions change. It's why we point out that poverty is, for example, really horrible for cognitive function. It makes people just less able to not just enjoy things, but focus on things, remember things. It makes it much harder to manage emotion. So I can say without a doubt that getting our company to the place that it's gotten this year financially has been the biggest game changer in terms of just my overall mood and my overall happiness, because I just don't have this ginormous monster on my back every day. And so I want to say, and even, by the way, I want to just give the caveat that even when we were having a ton of money issues with the business, it was still fathoms easier to deal with than when I was having very personal money problems, as an individual and couldn't pay my rent. Even within the sort of grand scheme of money problems, it was easier to deal with that one. Also, hilariously, I don't know if anyone else in the chat has ever experienced this as a small business owner, but once you are actually profitable, you will basically receive upwards of a dozen spam texts and emails and calls a day that are like, we can give you $250,000 in a line of credit today. Do you want to sign? Which obviously I'm not doing that because that's not the good kind of debt I want to be taking on, and we don't need it. And you should never be taking out, debt that you don't need to take. But it is just kind of funny that as it always is in this country and sort of in life, the moment you don't need it is the moment that everyone's offering it to you. So there's that. But I will say, even amongst a year that was also Zoran one, and I would like to say that I'm personally responsible for that, single-handedly responsible, I'll say, as someone who knocked the shit out of some doors, stood on the street, shook hands, passed out flyers, got yelled at multiple times, especially on election day, which was crazy. I'm kidding, obviously, but I do feel like his volunteer game was probably the number one reason that he was as successful as he was. There were obviously a lot of other aspects to kind of the alchemy of his success and what it means for, other possible elections in the country. There were a lot of things that were kind of working in his favor, no doubt. And he had a wonderful team. I actually recently got lunch with his campaign manager. She is an effing delight. Shout out to her. The amount of just sheer grassroots volunteer work that I was able to see up close, be a part of. I made friends through it. I got to know so many cool people, and just to see the way that people were, kind of coming together to support this on a very individual, very sort of no frills, no glory level was really lovely, because a lot of people only saw the viral social media aspect, but trust me that there were thousands and thousands of New Yorkers who are coming out to work really hard and have the one-to-one personal conversations to make sure that that happened. So that was another big highlight of the year. I would also like to shout out that on election day, I made the decision to go to the most Zoran hostile neighborhood in the city, based on electoral maps, because I was like, you know what? They can't scare me. Who are they gonna? They want to call the cops. We'll both call the cops. I'm gonna go into those buildings and have the tough conversations. And I did end up finishing my building with my canvassing partner, and then we went out onto the street corner, and woo boy, were tensions high. I literally saw a man and his 10-year-old son get screamed at by Cuomo canvassers, literally screaming in this 10-year-old child's face. I helped them move to another corner and took over their spot because it was so hostile. And then I posted about seeing that, and someone was like, wait, that's literally my friend. And it turns out the father of that child is an author at my same publisher, at my same imprint. And then we went out and got coffee, and now we're all making connections through getting screamed at on behalf of Zoran Mamdani. That's a beautiful thing. But anyway, all of that is to say that was another great thing. But I think the most like paradigm shifting thing for me this year, the best thing that happened to me this year was the series that I'm currently sitting on the set of, which is to say Just Getting Good, our series where I interview women over the age of 50. Obviously, I'm like very proud of it from, just like a purely sort of editorial perspective. I think it's a really good show. I think it fills a need that I personally really want to see filled as a 36-year-old woman who doesn't always feel super engaged by a lot of the content I see on social media. I've loved the conversations. I've loved, getting to meet these women. It's also been a really successful show for the channel in terms of content and also for our partners. Again, shout out advisor.com. I guess people are just in the right mind frame to potentially work with a financial advisor when they're watching women over 50 talk about their lives, which I totally get because they make me want to step my game up too. We actually, as I think I've referenced before, we filmed these episodes with our token 24-year-old man who he himself is even getting his finances right just from seeing these women. Is that... Shout out Fidelity. Well, shout out Betterment, but no, Fidelity's good too. But either way, like we're all wanting to step our games up a little bit, I think, seeing these women. So it's been just like a win-win-win. But I actually I'm very much about this. Like I have gone out in a social capacity or had over like basically every single woman that we've interviewed on the show. Like I'm like, we wrap the episode, we turn off the cameras and I'm immediately like, can we hang out? And it has been just genuinely so cool and interesting and healing in ways that I can't even tell you, because let me say, some of the women are very, very candid about any and everything on the shows, but even some of the ones who are a little more discreet, a little more reserved, when you're just having a glass of wine with them or grabbing lunch with them, like they have even more sort of like wild tales to weave. And you're just like, you would never think it, because we are so indoctrinated in our society to think that after a certain age or after having children or getting married, that women just stop living, stop being interesting, stop being desirable, stop being relevant, stop being any of these things. And like, that's the opposite of how all of these women are living. To see that up close, to have the privilege of getting to know these women, of becoming friends with them, seeing just the level of love that they've cultivated in their lives. I mean, for example, we had our holiday party where we had 4 of the women from the show who were on stage with us doing a live podcast. And they all had friends who came to support them, including one of them, Anita, our beloved Anita. She had one of her best friends from Stanford who flew from San Francisco just to come see her at our holiday party. And we were like in the after party, and she like grabbed me and she was crying and hugging me. And she was like, we all love Anita so much, and now the world gets to love her as much as we do. And I was like, what a blessing to have these women. I mean, at any moment in life for any person, but like, especially having gone through something like Anita has gone through, and obviously link her episode below, like it is just genuinely so inspiring, and it has taught me something that I already knew and I already felt like I was putting in practice, but has really underscored the importance of it, which is our friendships. We've gotten a lot of comments, and this is where I want to like, I'm engaging in the discourse, but like every single episode we put up basically at this point is like, what is this? The divorce monologues? Like all these women are divorced. We want a happily married woman. And I want to say, first and foremost, I hear you. I see you. You are acknowledged. But I have a few thoughts about this. Now, first and foremost is that we don't choose who reaches out to us slash who answers us slash who is recommended to us, right? Like it is to some extent a self-selecting group. And we have gone out of our way to try and find a diversity of stories, some that are focused on different subjects, different types of women from different income brackets, different ages, all of that. We haven't honestly had a ton of luck finding women who are happily married long term. And we talk a little bit about this in the next episode that we're going to air when we come back from the holiday break with a woman named Sophia, who is delightful. Also going to go out and get food with her. Like, I'm just going to put a picture of Sophia here right now so you can like catch a vibe. But this is Sophia. And we were talking because she's not technically divorced because she was never married to her children's father, but she is separated for a very long time. And like, we talked a little bit in the episode about why we think it is that, so many of the women are divorced. And I think part of it is like keeping in mind that we're talking about an older generation here, right? Like we have guests in their 70s. Like for that generation of women, often marriage wasn't great, like just kind of period. It just wasn't a great institution for women. And like, as we've discussed many times on the channel, now is still not a fantastic time for women in marriage on average. And I know everyone's like very quick to jump into the comments and be like, well, actually, my husband's like the perfect angel baby exception who like gets up at 5 in the morning to like make me breakfast and like does everything with the kids and like works a full job. I get it. Some of you are built different. But if we look at the averages, like someone has to be making up these stats, right? And like on the average, women still are kind of getting the short end of the stick in hetero marriages, especially when you take into account things like how much they are also expected to work and contribute financially versus how much they do in the home, period. Like, I'm not going to debate that with you, but it is leagues better now than it used to be. And for a lot of women of the boomer generation, like marriage and children was not necessarily something that you went into with a huge level of intentionality. It was just what you did. And in many cases, these women were married younger than we are now. They had children younger. They had fewer options. I mean, some of them were even coming of age at a time when they couldn't even have their own credit cards yet. So, like, we have to remember, first of all, when we think about like the number of women who are divorced that come on this channel, what marriage really used to look like for them, on average, again. And we have had women on the show who are married, but when you think about what the institution was, it to me makes total sense that a lot would be divorced. It's also worth noting that, like, especially again for that generation, women often were just not raised to put themselves first, to have a ton of autonomy and agency, to do what made them happy or fulfilled. So for a lot of women, like the self-actualization and the stepping into a different era of their life, a different identity, whatever, like that either was the impetus to get a divorce or it happened as a result of their divorce. Like for many of these women on the show, like they didn't even like have a good sex life until they were like 50 years old, or they didn't, start working out until they got divorced, or like they changed careers, or they retired, or they like traveled the world, or they did all of these things that like just would not have been possible in the context of their marriage, or they never would have necessarily pushed themselves to do or asked themselves was possible. Because I think that is also something that cannot be overstated, which is we know that the sunk cost fallacy is real. We know that humans are biased toward familiarity and comfort. So we're more likely to stay in like less than ideal situations if they are comfortable. But we also know that at the end of the day, like making these choices are, especially something like getting divorced after decades, especially in that age bracket, like that is going to demand a level of agency and self-reflection and desire for change that is probably going to bring on other change. And it's often those other changes that we're talking about on the show. And it can happen within the context of a long marriage, but it doesn't happen as often because we're just not as motivated to even ask ourselves these difficult questions, or really reflect. Again, like when you think about the messages that women were being raised with 50, 60 years ago, like their own needs, interests, wants, desires, etc., were barely even part of the conversation, especially not once they started getting older and having children. They were raised at a time where you just basically cease to exist after 35. But lastly, in terms of this being the divorce hour, I do want to lastly say, now also this is like not to like fight with you guys, but like we constantly get dragged about the fact that we don't have enough stuff about and for single people on here. Basically everyone on this show has been single. Here you go. Here's your single person finances, your single person navigating the world. Like you're getting you want singles, baby, you got them. Like you wished on a monkey paw to have more single content and now you got it. But I mean, that's to be fair, like that's the internet commentary. Like you can never please everyone all the time. And that's just like kind of part of the deal. But as a last note on like the single power hour thing, like I am a happily married woman. I've been with my husband for almost 15 years. I love him. He's wonderful. He's a very important part of my life, obviously. He's the biggest and most important part of my life. However, and I say this as someone who is happily coupled, I don't actually think that people in happy marriages or happy partnerships often have that much interesting advice to give in terms of partnerships. It's true. Like this is what I mean by that. Every partnership is unique. Every situation is unique. Every marriage is unique. What makes one marriage successful, functional, happy, fulfilled, all of those things is going to be different from one person to another. Even a small example, but like I have very separate finances with my husband. I like it that way. He likes it that way. It works for us. I know plenty of other couples, many including my own friends, who are, I would say, I don't know them, but I would say on the surface, they seem equally happy and content and fulfilled, and they've been together for as long as we have. And they have a totally different way of doing that. And there is no right or wrong way to do it. There is no like distinct lesson that you can take from one given marriage and be like, I can automatically replicate this, or like if I just do this, it will help. Like I love watching, like it'll be like an interview with some celebrity who's been married for 30 plus years. And if I love one thing in this life, it's like a male celebrity who's been with his age appropriate long-term spouse for a really long time. I feel like anytime I see that, I'm like, you should be president. Like Stephen Colbert. Like anyway, there's like a very short list, getting shorter by the day. We lost Hugh Jackman recently. That was devastating. But I say that to say, like, anytime I see that content about like them in an interview talking about like the secret of a happy marriage with their wife, I'm like locked in. I love watching it. But I also just don't take that much information from it. Like I'm just like, okay. Also, like it just like is like that works for them. It won't necessarily work for us. Like sometimes I'll be like, me and my wife like go out into the garden to have breakfast every morning. I'm like, well, I live in New York City, so I'll take that and keep it moving. But also as someone who like is a dedicated, devoted watcher of couples therapy with Dr. Orna, also shout out to my interview with her on this very channel. One thing I've learned from watching that show is like just because a couple is together, just because they've been together for a long time, just because they're married, kids, what have you, does not mean that you have anything to learn from them. Like a lot of relationships are bad and a lot of people stay in very bad relationships for a very long time. So I don't even necessarily know that someone being partnered is in any way an indication that that is a good partnership or that there's something that we might want to take from it. I think when I think about like the advice that I really want people to get from this show, that I get from this show and from listening to these women talk, the thing that I've really thought over and over and over again is that you only have control over yourself. You only truly fully know yourself, even in a partnership. Like, even if your partnership is completely perfect for as long as you're together, that person could still die, for example, and you would still be responsible for yourself. So, if you have not created that framework where you're able to take care of yourself, even something as basic as knowing your passwords, having access to all the accounts, etc. Like you could be in a horrible situation and many women are. Many women on this show were in that situation. So I think even for people who are happily partnered, it is still valuable and I would say essential to think and plan and prioritize as an individual so that no matter what happens, you at least know that you can take care of yourself. And that to me brings it back to why friendship is so important, and I've really taken that from these women because you do not know what life will hand you. You do not know what will happen. Again, some maybe within your control, a lot out of it. And if you don't have a solid group of people around you that you can turn to who can help you in very material, practical ways, but also in very emotional ways, if all you have is your partner, even if that's a great partner, that's still like we're not very diversified. That's a very risky investment to only have one person that you really trust or communicate with or who can help you in difficult times. So, all of that is to say, yes, I would like a few more very happily married people on the show. But even if I did have them, I don't know that we would talk all that much about their marriage in particular. Because again, I just don't think that what works for one person is necessarily going to work for another. And I just don't think it's all that useful in terms of information. But to me, the practical information that comes from unexpectedly having to handle things yourself, that's something that applies to everyone because we should all be preparing for that. Like, do you have an estate plan? Do you have a will? Do you have, an in case of emergency plan? Like, do you have insurance? Like, all of these things, even if everything works out perfectly and we never need it, are things that we should be planning for. And I do think for especially that generation of women, being in a partnership was like reason enough to leave all of this to the other person. And we see that in the stats. Again, it may be different for you, but up until very recently, like I think the stat was for a long time, 51% of women in marriages did not manage or control their long-term finances until the case of divorce or death of a spouse. And those are mostly women who worked, who contributed in some way, or at minimum were raising the children, which as we've discussed and know on this channel is also incredibly important work. I hear you is what I'm saying, but I think there are very valid reasons for these conversations to be the way that they are. So, as a last note, because this is my Christmas message, and for those who don't celebrate Christmas, happy holidays to whatever you're celebrating right now. I know there's a few different celebrations going on right now, but regardless of what you celebrate, for a lot of people, this is a time of holiday, it's a time of gathering, it's a time of family. And with that kind of comes the very complicated relationships a lot of us have with family and with being sort of in that framework. Our beloved Alexa here at TFD recently made a video, which we'll link below, kind of talking about Oprah's recent podcast on adult children going no contact and kind of referring to that as a trend, which I think is like a really kind of like incomplete slash unfair way to frame it. But I do understand that it's like it's becoming more popular now and more kind of the norm. And I just want to say this message, like I, like most of us have, let's just say, nuanced relationship with family. I think a lot of people do. And I think that for a lot of us, that can be shameful, that can be very emotionally burdensome. It can also make us feel kind of deficient. I have not a ton, but I have some people in my life, some friends, or even honestly my own husband, where I'm like, this family is like distressingly functional. Like, you guys are so nice to each other and you love each other so much and you love being around each other and you're so thoughtful and you're so kind and no one ever raises their voice or, you know, acts out or whatever. Like, it's just, I see that and I'm just like, wow, like your brain must be so like healthy. Like, this is incredible. And when I was younger, especially, like I used to feel very, 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 very insecure about that and very kind of, wishing that I had a similar level of functionality. And I don't, and that's okay. But I think for a lot of us, especially in the past 5 years, these relationships have gotten harder. They've gotten more complicated. They've, in some cases, as we know, dissolved entirely, become very, very fractured. And the holidays, as a result, can be a really painful time because you feel like you're seeing not just the fractures in your own situation and the things that you wish were different, but you're also watching like a 24/7 like highlight reel of everyone else's life, which seems so perfect and so easy and so harmonious. And yeah, it can be really, really, really emotionally difficult. Something that really stuck out to me at our holiday event that we did with, again, four of the women that we've interviewed for Just Getting Good was that I posed this question to them: what advice would they have for people who were feeling that kind of fractiousness or distress around their own families, and especially around the holidays, and were maybe not going home or were maybe kind of distancing themselves or setting boundaries or what have you. And what was interesting was like basically all of them had some version of that in big and small ways. Some of them, one of them, her mother did not speak to her for, I think, a decade plus. Another one had not spoken to her father, did not speak to him for 15, 16 years. Some of them have sibling relationships that are completely strained. Some of them don't have parents anymore. But what was interesting was one of them said, I didn't speak to my father for, I think, 16 years. And I could tell you the reason and you wouldn't understand it, but it's okay because you don't need to understand it. I need to understand it. And I think that was an important thing for a lot of the audience to hear because I think we often feel when things can be really difficult with family that there needs to be like a certain threshold that we reach in order to operate differently or to have boundaries or to opt out of certain things. And I think the truth is, for the people who will judge or look down on you for that, there will never be anything good enough. And you also don't owe them that explanation. I remember when I interviewed Jeanette McCurdy for the channel before her book came out, she mentioned in that interview that even when she would talk about the things that her mother, that obviously her book, I'm Glad My Mom Died, talks about in detail, when she would tell people about the things her mother was doing as kind of an explanation as to why she was not close with her mother, they would still say, but that's your mom. She tried her best. You only have one mom. And that, I mean, if you've read her book, you know how bad things were. But it goes to show that even when things are at that kind of fever pitch, the people who are committed to misunderstanding that or to judging it are not going to be swayed. And whatever your reasons are, like, they are yours. And these women have kind of taught me with each episode that, like, life gets good as you get more comfortable with yourself, as you get more confident, but it also gets good when you commit to loving and investing the people who love and invest in you, who see you, who respect you, who are happy for you, who share in your joys. And for some people, that is their family, and it is the people that they go home for the holidays with. And for some people, it isn't. It's kind of a little bit luck of the draw on that front. But continuing to invest, or at least invest in the same way, in relationships that are not helping or serving or even respecting you, for many, if not most of the women on the channel, breaking away from that and deciding to exclusively invest in the love that was loving them back was a key part of things getting good for them. And when I saw all of the women's friends at that event and how above and beyond they went to be supportive and present for their friend, it really reminded me that like family is the people who treat you like family are supposed to treat you. So if you're someone who's feeling sad this holiday because of that, I just want to remind you, and again, use these wonderful women of the show to remind myself and all of us that like we don't get to choose. It's what we do with it that actually makes the difference. And for some of you watching, like the person who's not pouring love and respect into you, maybe your own spouse. You know, some people are not even excited or happy to spend their holidays at home with their own immediate family, are maybe watching these episodes and feeling like something's really wrong here. Like maybe I need to make a hard decision. I think it's important to just remind yourself that that is always your choice and your prerogative, and that you don't owe an explanation to anyone really. Yeah, I want to just close this by saying that, like I said, I had a very exciting year. A lot of great things happened, but the best thing by far was this show. I'm really excited for the last few episodes we have coming out in the new year. I'm excited to do it again later next year. It's like clear my schedule. I need to do as much of this show as possible. I love it. But I commit now to finding more women who are married so we don't have like almost exclusively divorcees for next season. But in the meantime, like I hope you guys enjoy what we've put out already, the episodes that we have coming still. And I hope above all that you've taken the lesson from this, that like life is long. Apps like this, platforms like this, our culture tries to convince us that we get one shot at being interesting and young and sexy and whatever. And like after that, no one cares. But like we can have a new chapter whenever, we can start over whenever, we can change our minds whenever. And like we always, as long as we're living, as long as we're able, we can make a choice to do something differently. And it's never too late. It is literally never too late. So don't feel like you have to stay in something that isn't serving you, whether that's a job or a relationship or a location or whatever the case is. Don't feel like it's too late to change, or that you're too old, or who will want you, or you can't be, I don't know, in a classroom at whatever age you are, or whatever the case may be. Like give yourself permission to change your mind, because you deserve a lot of chapters in life. And with that, I'm saying goodbye on the last chapter of 2025 together. You guys will see our video essay, this month's video essay, a little later in next week. And we also have one last episode of our Mindful Wallet series coming on Sunday. So there's a lot of good stuff coming your way through the end of the year. But in the meantime, I wish everyone a Merry Christmas to those who celebrate, and just a warm, cozy New Year to everyone. Bye, guys.